So, starting off, Dart tool, you don't really need to worry about these. Anything that starts with a dot, you don't really need to worry. I can't speak today, God. Okay, you don't need to worry about any of these except for dot git ignore. That's like your git ignore thing, which is obviously quite important. Any of the important stuff that you don't want going onto Git, this is where you would put it. The .vs code thing, you don't need to worry about that unless you're using Linux. There's like this special like launch thing when you're debugging an app that you want to do, just so that you don't eat through your RAM immediately. There are like three main folders, four something. Okay, so the main one will be Android and iOS, right? That's what we're going to be building in. There's also a build thing, which is where all of your like whenever you test or debug an app, that's where it's going to go. And then there's the web thing if you're going to do any web development. And then we have test. The main place where we're going to write code is going to be in your libraries folder. So any new folder you're going to make, anything like that, you want it to be in library or lib. And then we have our main Dart, which is here. Let me just open. Yeah, let's go that one. So that can open in the background. Yeah. So first things first. Flutter is just, I guess you can call it a wrapper, but it basically, that's what you use to build your UI. So before, like in Java, if you've taken like CS125 or with Challen, or if you know Java in general, like if you're going to build something with Java, you have like an XML file. And I believe in that XML file is where you actually do all of your UI building stuff. For us, it's going to be like this in actual code instead of being some kind of XML file. The main thing is that we have a void main function. So how Dart works is it will look through your main.dart file within your library folder. And within that file, it's going to look for your main void main function. That's the first thing it's going to run. It's not going to do anything else before that. It's just going to run this. And then if you notice, it says run app, which obviously means run the app. And then it's going to run, it's a constructor, no, I think it's a function, but it takes in my app, which is a class right here. And that my app is basically what it's going to build. And so it builds all this code here. Are we done with, what is this? I don't want that there. Okay, I guess they changed that, nice. Anyways. Yeah, so let's go with, I guess, a basic primer to how Dart works. Dart is very, very similar to Java. If you just look at some of the code here, it might look a little weird, but it is basically the same as Java. Let's say, for example, I want to print something. Okay, so there's no system.out.println or whatever. You just do print, not type, print. Hello world. This is a lot easier because you have everything already set up for you, right? Normally you don't have any boilerplate code. God, I cannot speak at all. But yeah, so this is print. You can use that a lot, and it will basically go into your terminal here, or I guess it will come into debug console. But yeah, that's how you print stuff. Other than that, everything else should be basically the same as Java. So you have your strings, you have your ints, you have integer, which we'll go into that if we need it. You have bool, and is that it? I think, yeah. And then there's just objects in general. Yeah, if you want to make, say, an array, we don't call it array, I don't believe. Okay, yeah, we do. So there's arrays and lists. Like in Java, there's an array, so I can do array equals, and then you make an array, and you give a dimension, or you can call list, which is usually what I do most of the time. List equals, and then just the brackets. This is usually the most common way to do it. And then in this, you can put whatever you want. There's also this syntax for defining what your list is, which is, I think it's the same in Java. It's been a while, but like, see, for example, I have a list of strings. If I put in numbers in here, it's going to give me an error. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so I'm getting an error saying like, hey, you cannot put int into strings. So Dart itself is a very like I think they call it static language, which basically means that it's not like Python where you can just do like var x equals something and then whatever. I mean, you can do that because var exists, but most of the time, because of how Dart works, you want to define everything you know is going to have some kind of class or definition. If you don't, you can either use var or you can use dynamic. I'd recommend using dynamic. It's just a lot better. There's like a whole bunch of stuff with it that makes it better, but yeah, just use dynamic, and that's for when, like, for example, dynamic string equals hello, and then if I want to change it to like string equals an int, so that works. But if I make this a string immediately, right, I'm gonna get an error saying I cannot redefine that. Another thing is final. Final basically, as the name suggests, means that your string can only, or whatever it is, can only have one value. So you cannot redefine it. Equals, well, and I'm getting an error here, which is saying like it needs to be non-final. There's also static, which is like you can access it anywhere, so that would be like static. I think it's static. No, it's final static or final. It's one of the, either final static or static final. I think maybe. I don't know. Okay. Well, it's one of those two. It will work somewhere. I think we usually have it inside here and not in the function. That's why. Static final string. Yeah, that's where you have it. Yeah, so that's how you would make a static string. And static stuff is basically stuff you can access in anywhere as long as you call the actual class itself. Cool. Any questions so far? Also, I probably should have asked, do most of you have like some kind of coding experience? I'm going to assume most of you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, most of the, yeah, you should be able to get along with most of the syntax just fine. There's one other thing that I never knew about learning Java. So I don't know if it's a thing in Java or not, but there's no point in, no safety. That's what it's called. So say for example, string, I think you put it here. Equals string. There. What this question mark here is saying is that this string can be null. So I can do that, or I can do equals null. That's both the same thing. I think. Yeah. So you can do that. You usually don't, when you define it, you don't put it as null. You just do it like this. But this allows it to be null. If I remove this, I think I get an error. No. Okay. There's I think it's in the beta version or something of Flutter where you get errors if you don't have null safety. Either that or some other stuff. Sorry, either that or when you're using a package, it's going to tell you to use null safety for certain things. So that's one thing. Another thing is, for example, I do this, right? And then at some later point, I'm going to call string. So let's say, for example, I'm making a list of strings, list equals, and I want string to be in it. But say, for example, it's like a get request or something, or just something that like there's some manipulation happening behind the scenes that we don't locally have. You can do this thing, which is a double question mark, and then this. What this does is, what's the issue here? Okay, I see. With that, maybe?
I don't think you can call your string. Here the name is something else.
Yeah, maybe. My string. Cool. Actually, let's just not do a list. Let's just do it another string. Other string equals my string or hello. What's the issue now? Non-nullable. My string must be assigned before it can be used. Okay. That's annoying. Whatever. Yeah. So this is just being weird and annoying because I'm defining it right here within the function and calling it at the same time. So that what it's saying is, since my string has a value, it's never going to call hello. But at some point, like, you're going to have like a class that has a property, for example, and like, I don't know, say for example, user dot username, for example, right? And so in something like that case, you would use this if, for example, if your like username is null, then you want to have some default value. That's when you use this double question mark. It's a nice way to make sure you don't have some like weird null stuff happening in the background, or like displaying null onto your actual app. And then there's one last question thing, which is this. Let me think of the best way. Okay, let's say I have a boolean, this bool equals false. No, it's not capital. Okay. And then say I have a string, my string equals, okay, let's call it hello. And say I'm defining some other string here. So if I ever want to reference some other variable, for example this, I can say it's my string, but there's also sometimes a case where you want to run a test to see whether something is true or false, and then decide what's going to happen. For example, if I have like a user dot is logged in, right? This is going to check, like, so like this is just like an example, and it would be like, it would return either a true or a false boolean. So in our case, our boolean is this bool, so I'm just going to call that. And then after that, you put a question mark. And so the next term that comes is, if whatever statement is here is true, then do this, which I guess we can call my string. Else, if this is false, then do this, which is like bye, for example. So what this does is it's going to check the statement here. If you get true, it's going to run the first thing. If it runs false, it's going to run whatever's after this colon. And you can run actual like test cases. So for example, what if one, yeah, you'd have to use lambda expressions, and that's annoying, but whatever. Basically, like, if you want to have like some kind of comparison or something, you can use that as well. As long as it returns a boolean, you should be fine.